War is an intense armed, governments, societies, or paramilitary groups such as mercenaries, insurgents, and militias. It is generally characterized by extreme violence, aggression, destruction, and mortality, using regular or irregular military forces. Warfare refers to the common activities and characteristics of types of war, or of wars in general. Total war is warfare that is not restricted to purely legitimate military targets, and can result in massive civilian or other non-combatant suffering and casualties. While some war studies scholars consider war a universal and ancestral aspect of human nature, others argue it is a result of specific socio-cultural, economic or ecological circumstances. The English word war derives from the 11th century Old English words wear and wear, from Old French were, also guerre as in modern French, in turn from the Frankish wera, ultimately deriving from the Proto-Germanic werzo mixture, confusion. The word is related to the Old Saxon waren, Old High German waren, and the German verwirren, meaning to confuse, to perplex, and to bring into confusion. The earliest evidence of prehistoric warfare is a Mesolithic cemetery in Jebel Sahaba, which has been determined to be approximately 14,000 years old. About 45% of the skeletons there displayed signs of violent death. Since the rise of the state some 5,000 years ago, military activity has occurred over much of the globe. The advent of gunpowder and the acceleration of technological advances led to modern warfare. According to Conway W. Henderson, one source claims that 14,500 wars have taken place between 3500 BC and the late 20th century, costing 3.5 billion lives, leaving only 300 years of peace. Beer 1981, 20. An unfavorable review of this estimate mentions the following regarding one of the proponents of this estimate. In addition, perhaps feeling that the war casualties figure was improbably high, he changed approximately 3,640,000,000 human beings have been killed by war or the diseases produced by war to approximately 1,240,000,000 human beings. And c. The lower figure is more plausible, but could still be on the high side considering that the 100 deadliest acts of mass violence between 480 BC and 2002 AD, wars and other man-made disasters with at least 300,000 and up to 66 million victims, claimed about 455 million human lives in total. Primitive warfare is estimated to have accounted for 15.1% of deaths and claimed 400 million victims. Added to the aforementioned figure of 1,240 million between 3500 BC and the late 20th century, this would mean a total of 1,640,000,000 people killed by war, including deaths from famine and disease caused by war, throughout the history and prehistory of mankind. For comparison, an estimated 1,680,000,000 people died from infectious diseases in the 20th century. In War Before Civilization, a professor at the University of Illinois, says approximately 90 to 95% of known societies throughout history engaged in at least occasional warfare, and many fought constantly. Keeley describes several styles of primitive combat such as small raids, large raids, and massacres. All of these forms of warfare were used by primitive societies, a finding supported by other researchers. Keeley explains that early war raids were not well organized, as the participants did not have any formal training. Scarcity of resources meant defensive works were not a cost-effective way to protect the society against enemy raids. William Rubenstein wrote pre-literate societies, even those organized in a relatively advanced way, were renowned for their studied cruelty. Archaeology yields evidence of prehistoric massacres more severe than any recounted in ethnography. In Western Europe, since the late 18th century, more than 150 conflicts and about 600 battles have taken place. During the 20th century, war resulted in a dramatic intensification of the pace of social changes, and was a crucial catalyst for the emergence of the political left as a force to be reckoned with. In 1947, in view of the rapidly increasingly destructive consequences of modern warfare, and with a particular concern for the consequences and costs of the newly developed atom bomb, Albert Einstein famously stated, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Mao Zedong urged the socialist camp not to fear nuclear war with the United States since, even if half of mankind died, the other half would remain while imperialism would be razed to the ground and the whole world would become socialist. A distinctive feature of war since 1945 is the absence of wars between major powers, indeed the near absence of any traditional wars between established countries. The major exceptions were the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, the Iran-Iraq War 1980-1988, and the Gulf War of 1990-91. Instead, combat has largely been a matter of civil wars and insurgencies. The Human Security Report 2005 documented a significant decline in the number and severity of armed conflicts since the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s. However, The evidence examined in the 2008 edition of the Center for International Development and Conflict Management's Peace and Conflict Study indicated the overall decline in conflicts had stalled.